Hello everyone and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Friday, December 7th, 2018. On today's episode we're going to talk about the latest film and TV news, and we'll dive into some reaction for the Avengers Endgame trailer, maybe bordering on some spoiler speculation, and also talk about an Easter egg hidden in that Captain Marvel trailer as well. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Weekend Editor Brad Oman.
Hey, that's me.
And writer Hoai-Tran Bui.
Hey, everyone.
Yesterday it was raining here in LA. Today it's a sunny day. This has been your daily podcast weather report from, for me. Okay, no, let's move on because, there's a lot to get to today, including that huge Avengers trailer. But before we get to the comic book goodness, let's start off with Crazy Rich Asians, which it turns out they're going to be filming the sequels back to back. HT, what's going on here?
Yeah, so we knew that a sequel to Crazy Rich Asians was already greenlit and in the works, and that would be a sequel adapting Kevin Kwan's follow-up novel, China Rich Girlfriend. But now the producers for Crazy Rich Asians, Nina Jacobson and Brad Simpson, revealed that they'll be shooting two Crazy Rich Asians sequels back to back, and that will adapt China Rich Girlfriend and the third book in the Crazy Rich Asians trilogy. It is called Rich People Problems. So the script is currently being worked on by Adele Lim and Peter Sciretta, but this will mean that fans will have a longer wait up front because the films won't likely be able to start shooting until 2020. But by the time they do finish, it will get them, both of them, a lot sooner. And that's because the reason for this scheduling is because the cast now is in huge demand. Henry Golding, as you know, is starring in big movies left and right. He was in A Simple Favor this summer. In addition to Crazy Rich Asians, Constance Wu has scored a Golden Globe nomination for her role in Crazy Rich Asians. Awkwafina has also blown up, as has Sonoya Mizuno and Gemma Chan, and Michelle Yeoh is Michelle Yeoh. So everyone's busy. John Chu is also working on the In the Heights movie as well, and once he wraps that, he will start working on both Crazy Rich Asians sequels, likely by 2020.
This seems crazy to me because, until now, I feel like it's always been, big, huge blockbusters that have shot back to back. I guess Back to the Future 2 and 3 started it. We had the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the Matrix, the Hobbit, the Avengers, the last two Avengers films. But this is probably the first and only romantic comedy big enough to have a back-to-back sequel.
Yeah, I think you're right. I can't think of any other romantic comedies or anything that's not an action film or a YA franchise being shot back to back like this.
I don't know. That to me is just crazy. It's crazy how popular this film franchise is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exciting. Speaking of sequels, we have word that Warner Brothers is already planning an Aquaman sequel, even though the first film has not made its big splash. Brad, tell us about it.
Ooh, big splash puns. Fun. Yeah. Yes, Aquaman is already having a sequel in the works because the box office tracking is already looking so good. Plus, this is a DC Extended Universe movie, so obviously they hope this is going to be a big franchise and turn into one of the more successful parts of a comic book universe that has otherwise had its fair share of stumbles. It's not anything official yet, but there just are talks happening behind the scenes. It doesn't seem like it's been greenlit, or at least we haven't heard about it being greenlit yet. But the early buzz for Aquaman has been pretty decent so far, so it's not surprising that Warner Bros. Wants to get a jump start on Aquaman and ride any potential good buzz that might come out of it. As we know, next week they're going to be having the early screenings of the movie for Amazon Prime members, which is also a good sign. It means they have confidence in the movie and they want to get word of mouth going from fans who see it a week before it hits theaters everywhere else. So, yeah, I mean, this is it's a no-brainer, but it's interesting to hear that they're already working on a sequel.
Yeah, I think Warner Brothers has a lot of faith in this film. The reactions from the critics thus far has been very positive. I know I have talked about this film, and HT was very enthusiastic about this movie on, what was it, this week's Water Cooler?
Yeah, it feels like a while ago, doesn't it?
Yeah, this week has been a long week. But I don't know. To someone that's seen the movie, it seems like a no-brainer. It seems like you'd want to bring Jason Momoa back for more. But it's weird because Warner Brothers is kind of in this sticky situation where they're like half married to the Zack Snyder DCEU with Wonder Woman and Aquaman, and then the rest of the stuff, it's like they could just like, what are they going to do with it? Do they just dump it and start over? I know we've had this discussion to death on this podcast, so I won't bring us into that again. But it is kind of an interesting situation that they find themselves in here. Let's move on to our next story, and that has to do with theme parks, something I am very excited about. Star Wars Galaxy's Edge is set to open next summer. That is crazy to me. Next summer at Disneyland Resort and later that year at Disney World. People are as we approach this date, people are starting to wonder, how long how many people are actually going to get to go into Galaxy's Edge each day, and how long are people going to have to wait to ride these rides? And we're starting to get some kind of indication. A journalist for the New York Times, Brooks Barnes, did like a long lead thing where he actually got to step inside the Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run ride in Walt Disney Imagineering, where they had it built in kind of like a warehouse setting. And he said that Disney Imagineering says that they have enough pods to handle 1,800 people per hour in that ride. Of course, that's the best possible scenario. That's without, things going wrong in the state-of-the-art ride. There's never been a flight simulator, a motion simulator of this kind where the people can control it, that's going to be ridden by, hundreds of thousands of people a week. So things will probably go wrong, but theoretically, this ride has a maximum capacity of 28,800 daily riders. And, that's on the top of like what Disney rides can handle. A ride like Pirates of the Caribbean handles about 2,800 riders an hour. It's impressive, but also, the question is, Disneyland has a max capacity of like 70 or 80,000 visitors a day. So that means that only, 1/3 of the people that go to Disneyland in a given day are going to actually be able to ride this ride. I have this whole article on slashfilm.com. I'm not going to go into all of it here, but I talk about some of the rumors I've heard. There's rumors that these rides, Smuggler's Run and the Rise of the Resistance trackless dark ride, both of which will be opening on opening day of Galaxy's Edge, that both of those rides will only be available to FastPass. I've also heard that Disney themselves thinks that the first 90 days of Galaxy's Edge being open, that the park is going to hit capacity before 10 a.m. That's their estimates. A university teacher who studies these kind of things in Florida estimates that 200,000 fans are going to show up to Disneyland on opening day, and that'll leave, a good chunk of those out in the cold. It's going to be crazy. I mean, it's a good kind of problem to have for Disney. Like, how do you handle, a ride in a land that is so popular that, you're going to be having to turn people away. But it's also going to be frustrating for, families that are booking vacations and aren't even going to be able to, are going to be waiting in a line all day to just get into Disneyland. And then at that point, probably waiting in a queue to get into Galaxy's Edge. I also talk about this in the article. I'm not going to go too far into this, but there's also rumors that there might be like an extra ticket involved. So your ticket to Disneyland won't get you into Galaxy's Edge. You'll need an extra ticket from the Batu travel agency. And that might not even be for the whole day. That might be for a selected set of hours. So like from, 8 to 11 p.m., you get to visit Galaxy's Edge. This is all crazy to me. This is scary for someone who has an annual pass, because that probably mean that I would have to buy a ticket, an extra ticket every time I want to visit the Star Wars galaxy. Brad, I know I'm probably going to be there opening day. I'm going to be there like probably sleeping over, trying to be one of the first people to get into this park and experiencing these things. Would you do that?
I would love to, but it sounds like it's going to be an absolute nightmare. I just don't think I have that kind of like money or time to invest, especially when I don't know if I'll be able to do the things I want to do or really enjoy the experience. So I feel like I'm going to be one of those people who ends up waiting like a year or two before they get to go enjoy Star Wars in that capacity. But then again, maybe there'll be a time when I'm out there and hanging out with you after Comic-Con or something like that, and it'll work out, and we'll go. And
I'll be like, hey, do you want to go to the Star Wars galaxy?
And I'll be like, nah, I'm good. No, I mean, this is something that I am really excited about, and I honestly can't wait to do it. But all the things you mentioned just make it sound like it's going to be one of the most difficult things ever to try to experience.
Yeah, it does sound like a gigantic cluster, but I'm also worried that, they have Disney Imagineering has so much, their ambitions for this project are so high. And they're planning all these interactive elements, and there's going to be the story that follows you as a person throughout this land. And I feel like as we go on in time and, there's mass crowds of people in there, they're going to figure out a lot of this isn't working. And I almost want to experience what it is like on day one so that I have something to compare it to when they make it simpler and stupider, if that makes sense. Yeah. HJ, do you have any interest in going to Galaxy's Edge?
Not really. I'm sorry.
Have you been? You've talked, I think, before about going to the Wizarding World, Fairy Potter, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's really the only world that I'm very interested in going back to and doing a whole day there. Otherwise, not especially. Yeah.
Yeah. And the lines are gonna be crazy, but us Disney folk, we love standing in lines.
Oh, gosh.
So, yeah. Let's move on to another bit of news. I think yesterday we were saying that Kevin Hart was hired to host the 2019 Oscars. And it turns out that's not true anymore. He has stepped down. HJ, what is going on here?
Yeah, so more than 24 hours after Kevin Hart was announced as the official 2019 Oscars host, he stepped down from the gig. And this is following this huge sort of uproar after a few anti-gay tweets and comments that he had made were resurfaced following his official announcement. And after that outcry kind of started to build, Kevin Hart took to Instagram to make a sort of bizarre non-apology that did not go over very well with his critics, and he ended up speaking more about how the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences had given an ultimatum to apologize or they would find a new host. He decided to not apologize, and he stepped down, and now the Oscars are without a host once again.
Did he handle this badly?
He definitely did. His initial video addressing the resurfaced tweets basically did everything but apologize. He's mostly talked about how he's 40 years old now and he's grown and changed as a person, and he's the wrong guy to be attacking about this, but he didn't actually go and say sorry. He only actually officially sent out an apology after he had made the choice to step down. So he kind of did it all in reverse.
I know we were talking about yesterday how hosting the Oscars is not only a hard job, but it really isn't even good for your career. It's like a no-win situation. And I feel like Kevin Hart has already found this out in just 24 hours. I feel like his career has kind of taken a tumble after this controversy, and he was only the announced Oscar host for 24 hours. Brad, you were probably the most on the touch with the comedic scene. Who do you think should host the Oscars?
That is a good question. I actually made what is kind of a joke suggestion, but also I think would be really fun. And even though it's not necessarily movie related, it's still Hollywood related. Let's just get the marvelous Mrs. Maisel to host the Oscars.
I'd watch that. Do you think enough people have watched her that show to understand that though?
I mean, probably not, but it's it would, if anything, it would spread awareness. It would be fun, a little bit of an older school style comedian, but she's still got some edge to her. So I think that'd be fun. Otherwise, in more realistically, I mean, I feel like having someone like Donald Glover do it could be really fun. He's a stand-up comedian in his own right. He's a great writer. Has a great stage presence. Very funny. Also been very prominent lately on the scene. So I think that could be fun as well. But I also think that he's smart enough to stay away from a gig like that.
Yeah.
And I will say this for Kevin Hart. Even though he very poorly managed his apology and addressing this controversy, I will say, as somebody who knows a lot about the comedy world and how frustrating the politically correct culture can be for stand-up comedians lately, it is very annoying that these kind of things keep getting drawn out because people do change. And it's kind of the same argument we have with the James Gunn situation where he got in trouble for these tweets that were from nearly a decade ago. This is the same kind of thing. And I think if Kevin Hart would have reacted more favorably and not have been so arrogant about his apology, this wouldn't have been such an issue. But again, it's another frustrating thing where there has to be a kind of a statute of limitations as to how far in the past we're willing to dig these things up and pretend as if they're still current and real things that people believe in.
Yeah. Let's move on to another bit of comic book news. It turns out that Warner Brothers is also developing a Plastic Man movie. Brad, what do we know?
So DC is still chugging forward, trying to make movies as they sort of revamp the DC Extended Universe. And apparently one of the projects that they're working on coming up is going to be a Plastic Man movie. If you don't know who Plastic Man is, don't worry. Most of us didn't know who he was either. Especially, and it's weird because even though his name is Plastic Man, his superpowers involve his body stretching, twisting, and moving like rubber. So his name doesn't even really make that much sense either. But apparently Warner Brothers is in the process of getting this movie together, still early in development, so there's no director attached. And it's not even greenlit, so there's no guarantee we'll even see it happen. But Amanda Idoko, who is an up-and-coming screenwriter, has apparently been tasked with adapting the comic book. She has a movie in the works coming out called Breaking News in Yuba County, which is slated to star Allison Janney and Laura Dern. So she'll be writing the script for this. More than likely, she won't be the only one tackling this. I bet someone will be brought on to rewrite it afterwards, especially whenever they hire a director to take it on. For those who don't know who Plastic Man is, so he originates as a criminal named Patrick Eel O'Brien, and in the middle of a crime gone wrong, he ends up getting shot, and his wound and body gets exposed to these chemicals, and his gang leaves him behind. He makes an escape, ends up in this monastery, and a monk, sensing the good in him, keeps him safe. And when the guy awakes, when Patrick awakes, he kind of has this realization that he's been screwed over by his gang. This life of crime isn't really working for him, and he decides to use these newfound abilities that he has as he finds that his body can stretch and move in these things to do good. He's become a part of Justice League. He's in the New 52. He's a very comedic character. He was actually one of the earlier kind of comedic superheroes on the comic book scene. And our own Jacob Hall, who's more of a comic book expert than most of us here, says that he can be Looney Tunes-esque at time, a little bit slapstick because of how much of his superpowers involve his body. He's a little bit snarky, a little bit silly. So I'm imagining sort of a mix of Scott Lang from Ant-Man and Reed Richards from Fantastic Four. So there's potential here. It seems like DC is really leaning more into the lighthearted comedy aspect of comic books, especially with the Shazam movie on the way, having a much stronger comedic tone than any of their other movies. So we'll see if this gets off the ground and adds anything to the DC extended universe.
No, I think you're right. I think DC is definitely headed in this more comedic, family-friendly direction. They're kind of trying to get away from the Snyderverse stigma, and Plastic Man definitely seems like it's in that direction. But let's talk about the Avengers Endgame trailer. But actually, before we talk about the Avengers Endgame trailer, we should talk about they announced the title for Avengers 4, which is Avengers...
Hey, Peter. It's Jacob chiming in. Hi.
Slash film managing editor Jacob Hall once again cutting into our podcast.
I heard from across Slash Film HQ you mentioned the words Avengers and Endgame in the same sentence. And this is the title for the fourth Avengers movie, is it not?
It is.
It's the one keeping secret for like 1,000 years, or at least years now. Well, the title they said would not have a line of dialogue from the previous movie in it. That title, right, Peter?
Yeah, they lied.
Yeah, they're such liars.
Jacob, why are you here?
I have a clip to play from April 27th of earlier this year, a day and a half after Infinity War hit theaters, and we all gathered to talk about it. Let's roll that clip.
Now that we've seen Infinity War, what do you think the title is going to be, Ben?
My guess would be Avengers Reassembled, or maybe like Avengers Resurrected, something that's because like you were saying, we don't know how general audiences are going to respond to the ending of this movie, and they don't know that Avengers 4 is coming out yet because they don't read our site and they don't pay close attention to them. My parents don't know. They might go see Infinity War because they've seen a bunch of the Marvel movies, but they don't know the layout of the future of this franchise. So the idea of Marvel titling this Avengers 4 something that is sort of reassuring to the audience, like, hey, come on back, it's okay, we didn't actually do the thing that you thought we did at the end of Infinity War, kind of makes sense to me, but I don't know. Do you have any theories?
For the longest time, I thought Avengers Disassembled, but after seeing this film and seeing the downer ending, I don't think that would play to general audiences. I think they need something more optimistic, like your suggestion of Reassembled. Although Disassembled is a comic line, right? I'm not sure Reassembled is. Jacob might know better than I. Jacob, what is your idea for a title?
My idea for a title makes sense in that it's a line of dialogue from the movie, which I think is going to be Avengers Endgame, which I think says everything you know. It's the endgame for Phase 3. It suggests finality. It's simple. It gets the point across. But it's not a spoiler for Infinity War. It's not something that you need to keep hidden. So maybe I'm completely wrong there. But the moment that line was said, I think it was Doctor Strange who says this is the endgame.
Yes.
Somebody says it, and the moment I heard that, I said, that's the title of the next movie.
Okay, it looks like you were right.
I was right. I was incredibly correct for the first time in my life about anything.
I bet you were probably the earliest. I was trying to do a search just now to see if anybody had said that title before you did on the podcast, and I can't find record on Twitter of anybody saying it.
Well, I'm happy to lend my part to the great slash film machine.
Okay, so let's talk about that title. Like, what do you guys think of that title? I mean, I think it's a cool title. Endgame comes from, isn't it a chess word? I think so. I could be making this up, but I believe it's a chess word that basically is in reference to having to sacrifice something to win the game.
Yes, the final stage of games such as chess or bridge when few pieces or cards remain.
Yeah. And it's also obviously that line of dialogue in the movie where Doctor Strange tells Tony Stark that there's, a million or so possibilities and there's only one that they win. And later on, he asks why did he give him the time zone? He said, we're in the end game now. Brad, what are your thoughts on this title?
It fits thematically with, what we've come to expect from this Avengers movie. We've heard that Avengers 4 is supposed to be this culmination of the, first 10 years of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It'll be 11, by the time this movie comes out, but it makes sense. It's a little bit of a generic title, but I'm not necessarily sure what other title you would come up with that would have been any more satisfying. It's brief, it's to the point, it works. There hasn't been another sequel that has had that name, so that's good. It's definitely better than the other rumored title, Avengers Annihilation, which would have been marred by the fact that there's already a terrible Mortal Kombat sequel with that title. So yeah, it's fine. I'm not necessarily blown away by it, but it works.
Jacob, I know you already gave your thoughts in our when we went back in time in using the quantum realm, as they probably are going to do in this movie. But what are your thoughts now that this is official?
It's a totally adequate title. It gets the job done. It tells people what it's about. It tells you it's the end of something big, which it is. It's the end of Phase 3 and the end of probably many of the main core characters we've been following since 2008. It's easy to market, easy to sell. Everybody hears that and knows what it means. I'm not going to give it an award for most creative title in the world, but you know what? These movie sells itself, and this title is It's very short, simple, to the point, sweet, does the job.
HT, any thoughts?
I'm just happy that this is the end of the game that the Russo brothers and the rest of Marvel have been playing with us, that this is not the title. They've been lying to us for the past year. So I think it's a good title. It's simple and gets to the point like everyone's saying. I have nothing against it. I don't think that Marvel has had a history of great titles either. So it's good. It's in the line of just, good, appropriate Marvel titles.
Yes, some fans are kind of upset because they I guess the Russo brothers originally said that the title was a spoiler for Infinity War and that, they've been keeping it, secret for so long. And, this has been kind of anticlimactic because why couldn't they have announced this title, 6 months ago? But do you think this would have, I feel like they went on this campaign since they announced Avengers Infinity War Part 1 and Part 2 at the El Capitan Theater in Hollywood. They went on a campaign shortly after to kind of backtrack from that and say that, this isn't a 2-part movie. We're just shooting 2 films back to back. I think marketing and the company kind of told them that, people would not want to go to the theater to see just a first part of a movie and then if we knew that it was called Avengers Endgame, maybe people would look at that as, we're just seeing half a movie here. What do you guys think? Is that just me trying to read too much into this, or?
Oh no, I think you're completely right. It's the exact same reason why Thor 2 is not called Thor 2. It's called Thor Ragnarok. Thor: The Dark World, and why Thor 3 is Thor Ragnarok and Captain America: Winter Soldier, Captain America: Civil War. They started taking the numbers out of the titles because it gives you the impression that you can jump in and enjoy this movie no matter what. There's no, it doesn't say Marvel Part 17. Those numbers aren't going to bog people down, not going to scare people off. Whereas if you start looking at Iron Man 1, 2, and 3, they kind of did that before they figured this out. But yeah, I think it's all about trying to make it seem as accessible as possible.
Okay, because when we tweeted about this trailer on the site, when we posted it on the site, some people were like, "You have spoiled the Avengers title for us," and they were upset. Now we're gonna enter the spoiler room, because we're gonna discuss this trailer, and that will have some speculation and some observations that I guess could be spoilers, and we're also gonna talk about that Captain Marvel Easter egg as well, which has some speculation that could be spoilers. So if you do not want to speculate with us, turn off the podcast now, and you'll miss our insights, and so do that. Okay. We are now in the spoiler room. Brad, you did a breakdown of this trailer on /film.com. We'll link it in the show notes. What kind of interesting stuff did you find in this trailer?
So there's not a ton to glean from this trailer because they're playing things very close to the vest. They're not revealing a lot at this point. They haven't even really told us what the plot is of this movie, other than Captain America and the rest of the surviving Avengers somehow trying to come back from this after this, the snap event happened. But there are some interesting little details to notice. First of all, one thing that's kind of cool is we see a shot of Mark Ruffalo looking at some holographic profiles of people who are missing. And that's mostly because some of these people, they don't know what happened to them. Even with this, you could assume that they were turned to dust in the snapping. But on Earth, they don't know what happened to a lot of the people because they weren't around them. So as we see in this trailer, at this time, Scott Lang is missing. They don't know where he is because he wasn't around when this happened. Quickly, you see a profile in the background of Shuri, Black Panther's sister, who is missing. We don't know what happened to her at Wakanda. They don't know whether or not she was caught up in the dust or if she maybe survived and escaped and is hiding somewhere in Wakanda or elsewhere. And then, of course, her picture changes to Peter Parker, who is also deemed missing because, after all, none of these Avengers who are on Earth fighting in Wakanda know what happened on Titan, at least when this shot takes place. So a lot of these people aren't necessarily assumed dead by the rest of the Avengers yet. They haven't come back, so they don't know where they are. And then one other interesting thing to note is that we finally get to see our glimpse of Hawkeye, since he wasn't in Avengers Infinity War at all, and a lot of Hawkeye fans have been waiting to see what he's going to do and how he's going to be involved in this big conclusion of the fight with Thanos. And one thing that's interesting to note is that when he shows up, there's a voiceover from Steve Rogers talking about, he's saying, we lost friends, we lost family, we lost a bit of ourselves. And as soon as he said we lost family, that's when it cuts to Hawkeye. And I think that that's a subtle way of them telling us that the reason Hawkeye has become a Ronin, a sort of like a rogue samurai Japanese warrior, is likely because his family was killed in the snap for Thanos. And this also raises the question as to how much time has passed since the snap, because if enough time has passed for Jeremy Renner's character to, brood about it, be upset about it, and then become pissed off enough to go become a rogue assassin, then one would think that more time has passed than we might have assumed from the beginning. At the very least, it seems like maybe some days have passed since then, because we hear Tony Stark talking about running out of food and water 4 days before, when he's recording that message and sending it to Pepper Potts through the Iron Man helmet. So there's like I said, there's some interesting details to note here. Not a lot, but it's definitely something to tease us, to get fans excited about what's coming. And I'm personally really interested to see how they're going to market the rest of this movie without spoiling any of the big details that will make this an exciting thing to experience in theaters. I think it might even be harder to preserve than Avengers Infinity War.
Yeah, all these scenes are basically from what I understand is the first quarter of the movie, so it doesn't spoil much. Clint becomes Ronin in the comics. Is that correct, Jacob?
Yeah, there are a series of characters who carry the name Ronin, and Clint Barton is one of them.
But it's not because of the death of his family. It's some kind of other tragic circumstances, if I remember correctly. We also see Ant-Man here, who has returned from the quantum realm, showing up at Avengers headquarters in the van that contains that quantum tunnel that was shown at the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp. So somehow he has gotten out. We don't know how. Maybe Shuri has helped him? I don't even know if Shuri knows about his existence. Jacob, do you have any thoughts on this trailer?
It's a good trailer. I mean, it's as implied, it's very much a teaser. No big special effect shots because they're saving those and they're probably not finished. At the same time, it's the same thing with the title, man. You barely got to sell this thing. You don't need a huge hook. This movie's gonna make $1 billion overnight, and no one's gonna bat an eye. It's going to be, but so yeah, I like what we see here. I like that the movie seems to be dwelling on the fact that everybody's very, very upset by the events of the previous movie. Not gonna gloss over that. It's really interesting to see Tony Stark so defeated. It's interesting to see everybody look like they're at their lowest point, because they are, and I'm looking forward to seeing them crawl out of that. And I'm very excited to see Scott Lang come by and save the day. And Ant-Man, Paul Rudd, of all people, is going to save the universe. That's very cool, very exciting.
It's also interesting that Captain Marvel doesn't appear in this trailer yet, which she's kind of a big part of this movie. But maybe they're trying to keep, her story to the marketing of her own film at this point. This trailer surprisingly does not really tell us anything about this movie. It kind of just shows defeat, as you said. I mean, it looks like Black Widow is catching up with Ronin to recruit him, maybe? Maybe there's something going on there. But HT, do you have any thoughts on this trailer?
I'm in the same boat. I like it a lot. It doesn't show that much, so you can't really get a full impression of it. But I quite like that the trailer centers around Tony Stark, and like most of the trailer really is just his monologue to the helmet, and it kind of feels like it brings everything back full circle, since we started with him and possibly we're ending with him. I do like. I was very happy to see Hawkeye again, or Ronin, because he was missing for the entirety of the last movie. And it's very exciting also to see Paul Rudd be the savior of our world, because who doesn't want that? It injects a little levity into the trailer, too, because he's the only one who kind of elicits a little giggle, aside from everyone else. It's just very downtrodden.
I also love the shots on Titan 2, where we see Thanos has put his entire armor on a stick, and it's kind of almost like a makeshift scarecrow in his field, and him walking through the field, and we see the burnt out gauntlet.
Apparently that armor scarecrow is something that is pulled directly from the comics.
Yeah. And we also notice obviously Captain America has shaved. That doesn't tell you how much of a time jump we have here, but I'm guessing it's at least a few years, if not 5.
Cap's uniform's been restored too, and Infinity War is completely faded almost to black, and now he seems to have repainted the white stripes and star. Not that that matters at all, but I did notice that.
Yeah. Well, you could read Brad's whole breakdown to get all the little bits. What is that spaceship that Tony is flying in the beginning of the trailer? Do you know?
I'm pretty sure that that's the Guardian's new ship, the Benatar. It's the exterior shot that we see in space. It doesn't quite have the same shape as we're used to seeing that ship, but if you look at the interior, it looks like it has the same seats as the Guardians of the Galaxy ship, and the interiors look very similar around the seats as well. So I'm pretty sure that that's the Guardian ship.
I agree with you guys. I feel like they don't really need to market this movie. People are they could literally have no trailers, and I think people would show up on day one and it would break records. This trailer, there's very few films I think nowadays that can actually have a teaser trailer that's a real teaser trailer that doesn't even reveal what the film is about. And this is, one of the rare teaser trailers we get. And I always love those kind of teaser trailers. So I really enjoyed this. I can't wait to get more. I want to learn more. And maybe we can learn some more from the Captain Marvel trailer that was also released. Was that this week?
It was. It doesn't feel like it, but
yeah,
it was
this
definitely
week is like a long week. It feels.
This week was 84 years.
Yes. Brad, I know there's this theory going around, kind of based on some Easter eggs in the Captain Marvel trailer, which might give us a clue as to what's going on in that movie, and also possibly Avengers 4, Endgame. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yes. So in the Captain Marvel trailer, there's a sequence where Carol Danvers and Nick Fury are in a Quinjet that's blasting out of what appears to be some kind of shield base. And there's a quick shot of the exterior of that Quinjet where you notice a partial piece of the Project Pegasus logo. And for those of you that don't remember, Project Pegasus is the name of the project that was being conducted by S.H.I.E.L.D. when they were studying the Tesseract. We find out about that at the beginning of the Avengers when Loki comes to steal the Tesseract in an attempt to use it to bring the alien force of Chitauri to New York and wreak havoc on Earth. So it seems like that there's a connection here that the same base that Loki infiltrates in Avengers is the one that Carol Danvers and Nick Fury will end up at, and that's not really a stretch because that, as we learned in Avengers, that base is in the Mojave Desert, which is not far from Los Angeles, which is where a lot of the Earth set scenes on Captain Marvel are supposed to take place. And the fact that we know Project Pegasus involves research in the Tesseract perhaps gives us some insight as to what this war between the Kree and Skrulls coming to Earth is all about. So maybe the Skrulls are trying to get their hands on the Tesseract. There's actually a whole comic book arc in the Secret Invasion event series about the Skrulls trying to get the Tesseract. And as we know, the Tesseract has an Infinity Stone inside of it. So this could end up having Captain Marvel tie into the larger story arc. It allows the Marvel Cinematic Universe to fill in some time gaps as to what was going on with the Infinity Stones at certain times. And there's a chance that it could help set up something that happens in Avengers 4 even, involving Captain Marvel and the Infinity Stones.
I like this because, in the comics, from what I remember, what brought the Kree Skull War to Earth is kind of Earth was just in the middle, and that always seemed kind of stupid. This actually gives a reason for Earth to be kind of at the center of this battle. And but on the other hand, we know what happens to the Tesseract, so we know that they don't get control out of it. Because, this takes place in the 90s. I guess it's kind of like one of the bad parts of it being a prequel. Jacob, do you have any thoughts on this whole setup, or this possible setup?
Part of me is a little bit tired of Tesseract popping up every single time we need an excuse for anything to happen in the MCU.
But it's
at the same
the
time,
ultimate MacGuffin.
Yeah, I mean, if there has been this all-powerful force on Earth since the Viking days, just hanging out here. And it makes Earth important. It gives Earth a reason to be continental. This, you're right, Peter. So yeah, I mean, sure, it gives an immediate hook for Captain Marvel. People know what Tesseract is from previous movies, and it's just an easy entryway. Part of me wishes that there was something new here, but I'm not going to complain about it.
The Tesseract coming into play so much. They even had it a few times on like Agent Carter, and I was like, okay, I don't think we need this anymore.
I think it's more than an Easter egg, but we'll have to see when Captain Marvel hits theaters. That brings us to the end of today's Slash Film Daily. You can find more of all of our work on slashfilm.com and linked in the show notes. This podcast is published every weekday on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send us your feedback, questions, comments, concerns. Do you have your own theories about these two trailers? Send them to peter@slashfilm.com. We'd love to hear them. Please go to our iTunes page, write us a couple sentences, give us 5 stars, spread the word, tell your friends, and we'll see you tomorrow.